talking about gastrointestinal system today. The other name for this system is the digestive system. Now this system, as we say it a system, so it will be comprising of various organs. Practically, it is a tube extending from mouth to the last end that we call as anus. Let us see the first slide. The objective of this lecture will be that we will revise various parts of the digestive system and outline their structure and functions. We will also talk a bit about the digestive process. Next slide. So gastrointestinal tract is the tube that takes up the duty for the digestive system. Now this, as we said, extends from mouth to the anus. Now this tube is a motile tube, and this we know that for motility we always need some muscles. So this tube is comprised of musculature which moves it all the time, and the sounds of movements that can be listened also through a stethoscope. Now this system we may name in abbreviation as GIT system, or we can call it as a digestive tract. Now let us see that what this digestive tract is composed of. What are the different organs that contribute, different parts that contribute to it. Next slide please. Now two portions of this system. One is proper digestive tract, which consists of mouth, pharynx. So starting from mouth, pharynx, esophagus, stomach, small intestine, and large gut or intestine. Now it will end into the last portion, the rectum and anal canal. Now in addition to the main tube, we have some extra glands which comprise of liver, gallbladder, and of course we should not miss salivary glands in the mouth, and then another important gland, the pancreas. So we will see their structures and functions one by one. Next slide please. Now whole of the digestive process, before we go for the different parts, the main function is to digest what we take in and provide us with the nutrition that we need for our metabolic activities. So this process basically digests the food, and food is taken in the form of different chemicals like carbohydrates, proteins, and fats, along with a quantity of water. And when we take these components of food, they are added by the digestive tract by different chemical compounds, and these includes various enzymes that will make it palatable. So whole of this compound which we take in will be first made into a bolus. This bolus will be traveling from mouth down to the tube till it is absorbed, and last waste product is removed through the anus. All this process, whole of this process, comprise of certain steps that we can better see in this slide. The process of ingestion, that is to take in the food. Process of propulsion, that how the food moves. As we said, this is a mobile tube. It moves all the time. Motility is there. So it will propel the bolus forward. Now process of digestion, one of the aspects is that we call mechanical digestion. So there are certain mechanics involved which will crush the food, churn it up, and it will mix the different segments. Then a chemical digestion comes up which adds enzymes and certain material like hydrochloric acid, pepsin, all they give digestion to the food. When the food is digested, it will be taken into what we call the process of absorption. it means that this digested part will be shifted to blood or lymph, and it will reach to every corner of the body. The waste products which are indigestible, which are not palatable, they will be removed through the process that we call defecation. So we will be talking about organs, their structure and their role during the process of digestion. Next slide please. So first part which comes in the way is the mouth, and we all know that it comprises of certain components. The boundaries of the mouth starting from the lips, cheeks, then the roof of the mouth as palate, which is hard and soft palate. We will have the floor with the tongue resting on certain bones and muscles. Then we have inside the most important portion for chewing and for mixing the food is the tongue. Of course, this is an important component for our talking process also. Then we have certain muscles which will mix up the food with saliva, the salivary gland, which will secreted by salivary glands, and this will mix and moisten it to go it further. Now, all these components, the important one for chewing are the teeth. Next slide please. So, the first component, most important one that we talked, the tongue, comprised of muscles, a muscular organ, and it not only helps for food but also for the speech. Now, the process, first step for taking the food in, that we call swallowing, is also another function which the tongue helps. Now, this part, this organ is where we taste also. So it is, if we look at it, the anterior 2/3 of the tongue and posterior 1/3 of the tongue, this is not a smooth surface. It is comprised of certain taste buds which tell us about the taste of the food. So that creates the urge for food. Next slide. So next, another important set is what we call the teeth over there. So these teeth, they are in a system of what we call the primary teeth and the secondary teeth. And we remember those set of teeth with a formula that we call as 2, 1, 2, 3. So in quarter of our mandible, in the jaw that we call lower jaw and upper jaw, teeth are placed in the sockets, and they are in case 2 incisors, 1 canine and 2 premolars, and 1 set last the molars. So total 8 in 1 quarter. So an adult possesses a set of 32 teeth. All these teeth, they help for what we call the chewing process. Now, the first set of teeth, primary, the baby teeth, the sugar teeth some people call it, they disappear from 2 to 6 years, fall out in between and replaced by the permanent teeth. And these permanent teeth, they are responsible for chewing. Next please. Now next please. We have seen this. Now another thing we said that in the mouth we have a chemical compound, saliva. Now this is secreted by some sets of glands that we label as salivary glands. Most important one, the parotid gland on the side of our mouth in front of the ear. Now this gland has a duct which opens in the mouth opposite to the upper second molar tooth, and it adds to the saliva, the saliva. Main quantity of saliva is added by this gland. The another set of glands is that sublingual and submandibular glands. They also add to the saliva. When we look at the composition, this saliva is a mixture of water, ions, mucus and enzymes, and they will make the food moist and palatable. So from this, the whole bolus is constituted. Next please. Now the food now reaches, if you look at the slide, please just see the bolus has reached into a region that we call pharynx, and practically back of our mouth, the region of the pharynx that we call oropharynx. we have talked the naropharynx in the system, respiratory system, the upper part, then last portion that laryngopharynx, and some people they call it hypopharynx. Now all this, whole of this tube is also controlled by the muscles. So bolus is moved onward and it reaches to the tube that has to take in the food, the gut tube, the esophagus. Next slide please. Now this esophagus, a tube which starts from the back, from the laryngopharynx, and it is the tube which is not open all the times like air tube, but it open as soon as we swallow. So important function of swallowing is the phenomena which keeps the food going on, and this is again with the help of the muscles and of course a valuable arrangement of epiglottis. When we decide to swallow, the epiglottis just closes the air tubes. So that is a protective mechanism which closes the trachea and food will enter into the esophagus. Now this esophagus is very unique tube. If we see its structure, three components, three portions are to be recognized. In first portion we have got purely skeletal muscles, while in last we have got the smooth muscles. Now these in between region is a mixed group of muscles, smooth and skeletal. This arrangement of muscles has got an important functional impact. Skeletal muscles we can move on our own will. So in the first part we have to swallow. Even if the food is placed in the pharynx and we do not swallow, it will not move down. So we have to swallow, and once we swallow, then we cannot take it back due to the smooth muscles arrangement which work automatically. So this smooth muscle and skeletal arrangement denotes the function of this tube. Next please. Now the next portion that the food bolus will enter after the esophagus, the stomach, the main machine that blends the foods. It churns, mixes and blends the food. Now various portions of this region has to be recognized. A portion of the uppermost that we call as fundus, another big portion the body, and a pyloric region. Now this functionally and according to the chemicals which are secreted in the stomach, a portion of antrum has also been devised, but anatomically it is a part of the body. Now this stomach is a J-shaped normally, but when it gets filled, it will change its position. Now the uppermost passage from esophagus to the stomach is controlled what we call a physiological sphincter, and this sphincter is working with the help of what we call the diaphragm. So diaphragm portion is which is controlling the entry of esophagus into the stomach. It is a physiological sphincter. Any food which enters through this sphincter will not go back and will be retained in the stomach. Now if you look inside the stomach, we have a special arrangement of the mucosa, the inner lining of the stomach, and this inner mucosal lining is produced in what we call folds, and the proper term is that we call as ruga, and with plural as rugi. So these rugostic arrangement is mainly concerned to increase the surface area. If we have a flat mucous membrane, this will cover more area as compared, and this more area can be made compact by this arrangement. Now this, due to this arrangement, the surface area for the digestion and absorption it increases. Next, the food has to enter into, next slide, small intestine. Now this, the small gut, the small intestine is divided into duodenum, jejunum and ileum. Now these three portions have got special structure and special properties for functions. Now from the stomach onwards, when it enters into the first portion of the small intestine, that is the duodenum. The word duodenum comes from 12 inches. So they say that the length is about 12 inches and it has got portions which are the 4 parts of the duodenum. The second part of the duodenum is most important, where we have got openings from the ducts. And one of the ducts coming from an accessory gland, the pancreatic duct, from pancreas. And the other one coming from the gallbladder, and this duct practically carries the bile produced in the liver, and it is stored in the gallbladder, and when we take some fatty food, it is added to the second part of the duodenum. Now from this the food will travel into the next portion, the ileum. Now this ileum is the longest, the duodenum first and then ileum. So it will travel from duodenum to the ileum, and this ileum is the longest part of the small intestine. Now the small intestine's 3 portions that we have decided, that we have described, they are the portions where we have got the 2 main openings, the ducts of the pancreas and duct from the gallbladder, that is practically coming from the liver. So bile and pancreatic juice, they are added to this portion, and they are rich in enzymes which are helpful for digestion, and of course they will make the food more palatable. Now next slide please. Now after this the journey is carried out to the next part that we call the large intestine, the large gut. Now this tube, it differs from the small intestine, of course, in diameter, in length, but even it is less than the ileum, but we call it large because the diameter is more. Now when we see this tube, it is again consisting of number of portions. If we start from the small intestine, the first portion is what we call the cecum, and this portion is communicating with the last part of our small gut, that is the ileum. So over here we have an ileocecal junction, an important junction which is the entry for the food digested into the from small gut to the large gut. Now this ileocecal junction, after this the cecal portion, then we have the portions of the large gut that are what we call the ascending colon. The other name for this is colon, transverse colon and descending colon. So these 3 portions lead into an S-shaped, the sigmoid colon, and this sigmoid colon will end into the last portion, rectum, which will end into anal canal, and the opening for this anal canal is anus for the defecation purpose. Now this tube, the large intestine, has got certain qualities by which we recognize it. Next slide please. Now this again shows the same, but one thing to be remembered, that this is the main tube where water is absorbed. We will see the absorption at the end also. Now the next slide please. Now this tube, large gut, can be recognized from the small gut by 3 special features that we have to remember. One is that we call as tinea coli. These are actually muscle strips which are just placed on the surface. So whole of this surface is marked with tinea coli. Coli words come from the colon and tinea from the ribbon. So they are ribbon-like arrangement of the smooth muscles that has been placed on the surface. Then we have huster formations and epip-like appendages. These are fat, omental fat pouches, pockets of the fat that have been added, the yellow in the slides that we can see. All the 3 structures we can see: the tinea coli, the mesentery, the hustrations, and epip-like appendages. So these are the recognizing characteristic features of the small gut, of the large gut, which differentiate this portion from the small gut. Next slide please. So This tube that we have seen from mouth downward to the rectum and anal canal and openings is helped or aided by some of the accessory glands. And these glands, they of course help for the food digestion. One of the largest glands of the body is what we call as the liver. Now this gland is placed on the right side of our body, and it adds a lot of enzymes functions to the digestive system. And another gland, next please, the gallbladder. Now this gallbladder is attached to the liver, and if we see that in the liver we have bile formation, this bile comes from the liver by two ducts, the right and left hepatic ducts, and is carried into the gallbladder. Now gallbladder is a storehouse for the bile. So for storing any product, condensation is required and water is evaporated. So the bile from the liver and bile from the gallbladder will be differing in the quantity of water. Now this tube joins with the cystic duct and makes what we call the main hepatic duct, then cystic and main bile duct. This was the tube which we talked open into the second part of the duodenum. Now this will add bile juice as we take some fatty food. There is a special mechanism that alerts the gallbladder to contract when bile is needed. The next gland is, next slide, is pancreas. The third important accessory gland which is adding to the the chemical compounds to the digestive process is pancreas. And very interestingly, this gland has got two portions, what we call as exocrine portion and endocrine portions. It means that the secretion from this gland is carried out by a duct, and it again opens in the second part of the duodenum as pancreatic duct. Second part is the endocrine, where the secretion of the gland directly opens or joins the bloodstream. In digestive process, we are mainly concerned at present with the process of exocrine system, and this adds to the digestive process the chemical pancreatic juice. Now this whole gland, of course, is having different portions. In the curve of the second part of the duodenum, we have the arrangement of this gland, the head portion, then we have the body and the tail portion. So it practically extends throughout the abdominal cavity. So all these three glands, they add a lot to the digestive process. Next please. Now these all components, what we have seen the structures, for purpose of study, when we have to study the person as a patient, as a human being, for purpose of study we divide this abdominal cavity into different regions. Two systems are used. One is that we will divide the whole abdominal cavity into 4 quadrants. And second system is that we will divide this whole system by lines drawn and 9 regions of the abdomen. So either 4 quadrants or 9 regions of the abdomen. This is merely for the purpose of study. So when we see one by one, the next slide please. The abdominal quadrant, 2 lines they divide. One line, if you look, is passing through the umbilicus, horizontal line. The other line vertically downwards, and it will make, and we name them according to the upper and lower, right and the left quadrant. So right upper quadrants are abbreviated as RUQ, and left and right, this one left upper quadrant LUQ, then left right lower quadrant, and of course left lower quadrant. All organs which we have seen, they will be placed in different quadrants. Next slide please. Now if we take one by one, the right upper quadrant, the main structure over here is the component, the biggest gland, largest gland, the liver, along with gallbladder, the duodenum, head of the pancreas, and when we talked of the colon, this colon was ascending colon and it makes a curve. So due to the presence of liver, this curve is called what we call hepatic turn or hepatic flexure of the large gut. So it is lying in the right upper quadrant out of the 4 quadrants. Next slide please. Then we have the left upper quadrant, and if you look at the slide, the stomach is the main component over here, major portion of the stomach, and it occupies extending to the right upper quadrant also. Then other organs, spleen, left lobe of the liver also extends to this region, and left kidney and adrenal glands. Below we have got the left kidney over here. Then we have got the other bend of the large gut due to spleen, called as the splenic flexure. So this splenic flexure on the other side is in the left upper quadrant. Now the parts of the transverse and descending colons, they also lie in this quadrant. Next we will see the right lower quadrant. Over here the main portion is what we call the junction between the small and large gut, the cecal region. Then another important vestigial organ, appendix, ascending colon, ovaries, right ureter. Next is the left lower quadrants. Now descending colon, the other part, it crosses this system, sigmoid colon, and of course left ovary and fallopian tubes, and it will go to the left ureters. So all the organs which we see in the abdominal cavity, they are placed in these 4 quadrants. So we can refer to these quadrants when we have to write the history, the complaints of the person according to the quadrant. The other system is 9 regions. Now these regions, if you see the slide, they can be divided by 2 vertical lines which are taken from the middle of the bone, collarbone, mid-clavicular, and 2 horizontal lines. They divide this whole regions into whole abdominal cavity into 9 regions, and these regions, they are named accordingly. Next slide please. There will be a central portion in upper epigastric region, lower down is the umbilical region and hypogastric. On the other 2 sides we can have right regions and left region. So below the ribs, the first right hypochondric, opposite to the left hypochondric regions, right lumbar and left lumbar. Then we have right iliac and left iliac or inguinal region. Now all the organs which are within the body cavity, they are arranged in these 9 regions. And next slide please. And these are placed over here in the form of what we call a map has been derived over here to see different contents. Next please. All these components, organs of the abdomen, they can be seen and they are arranged. So out of these 2 systems, for description purpose, we can use any of the systems, either 4 quadrants or 9 regions of the abdomen. Now with this, next, I think this is the last one. Next, one important thing is that we have seen in the first, second or third slide that this digestion process comprises of certain steps. Now if we want to brief it, and next slide, this one, then next down this one, this slide, that it consists of ingestion, propulsion, mechanical digestion, chemical absorption, defecation. So out of all these processes, can you focus the slide please? Can you focus the slide? All these processes, the first process we have seen is that the ingestion process. We have to take in the food and it will enter into the mouth, and the process for this is what we call as the swallowing after the mouth to push it down through the esophagus. Now this esophagus is a motile tube. Whole of the GIT is a motile tube, and this of course is a tube which will propel this bolus or the food down into the regions that is the next part, the stomach. So if we just brief it out, the different regions of our GIT systems, and we will see the movements of this system, and then we can see that what is added to this, and does it help for digestion or absorption. So this summary can help us that starting from the first, the mouth, when we have taken in the food, mouth, plus of course in mouth we have got the salivary glands. So what is the main movement over this in this region is that we call chewing. So we have to chew the food, to mix the food, churn it up, to mix it up to make into a bolus. And of course secretion is what we call saliva over here. Now it has got certain enzymes, the amylases and mucus and lysozymes, and they also go. Now over here they say that carbohydrate, they start their digestion, but absorption is not possible in the mouth. So they cannot take place in the mouth. Now this process, from this onwards, we will go to the next part, the esophagus. Now this tube of esophagus is the main tube where we perform what we call swallowing process. Now this swallowing process will move the whole food forwards, and over here we have a secretion of mucus, so it will make the bolus palatable to pass it on from this tube, but no digestion takes place, and of course no absorption takes place at this level. So merely the function of the esophagus is to pass the tube onwards. Then of course the food will enter into stomach, and in this portion the major things they happen. In this portion the major things they take place, major mechanisms they take place. And this has got what we call the functions of movement, large mobility, which we call peristalsis. And this of course mixes the food, churns the foods, makes into smaller components, and number of chemical compounds they are added over here. Practically we call this totally as gastric juice. So this gastric juice will be consisting of secretions like HCl, pepsin, and of course mucus, and one important thing that we call as intrinsic factor. So all these are components in the stomach. Now they will start mixing and everything, and now the process of digestion will become active, digestion of carbohydrates, and of course in the first part of the stomach, then it will start with the digestion of proteins also. But absorption, they say that it is none in the stomach. But some of the chemical compounds like alcohol can be absorbed from the stomach. Then we will pass it to the small gut, small intestine, and over here we have got the functions. The mobility is again peristalsis at its mobility, and of course another process occurs that we call segmentation. So this will move the food further to the next portion, that is the large gut. Now over here we have got number of compounds, chemicals, the mucus secretions with salts and digestive enzymes. So all these they further help for the food digestion, and rather in small intestine the digestive process is completed. So this is a milestone that all the process of digestion is completed in the small gut. Now over here the absorption is also taking place, and number of nutrients, nutrient materials like water and electrolytes, they all get absorbed through the small gut. till the food passes to the large intestine. Now large intestine, again peristalsis is there, the mobility is peristalsis, and of course we have got the secretions, most which is the mucus. So you just see that nutritions, water, electrolytes, so food has become more towards solid type. And over here the mobility is by peristalsis, but absorption is only for salts and water. So just to differentiate between small gut and large, please remember that small intestine is for the absorption of all the components, water, electrolytes and nutrients, while water is mostly absorbed, rest of the water and salts, they get absorbed through the large gut, but digestion is none in the large gut. So with this map in mind, the glands, liver, pancreas, they, of course, liver with gallbladder, they also add chemical compound, the pancreatic juices and the hepatic juice, bile juice from the liver for the overall process of fat digestion and to complete the process of digestion. So with the region wise, please just remember that in the earliest entry of the food from the mouth, the main purpose is chewing and absorption is not there, but food starts, some of the digestion of carbohydrate starts. Then we have esophagus where mobility is the only function. Then we have stomach where churning, mixing, bolus, everything gets mixed and digestion of carbohydrate and protein starts. Small intestine is the portion which is mobile and segmented, and it will complete the protein digestion, and it will lead to the nutrients, water, electrolyte absorption. That means they will join into the bloodstream. Large gut is merely for the salts and water absorption, and digestion is none over there. After this, the indigestible material that passes what we call the process of defecation, and it goes to complete the process of digestion, the last end being the anal canal and rectum with special qualities to retain for some times and then till we have to pass. So that completes with an introduction to the GIT system plus some of salient functions. Thank you very much.